49ers faithful, lock in because this is not just another offseason update. What's happening in Santa Clara right now feels like the kind of buildup that tells you something bigger is brewing. There are bold draft questions on the table, win-now roster decisions being made, depth issues that could become real pressure points, and a free agency stretch that has thrown San Francisco right back into the contender spotlight. And that's the real story here. This team is not moving like a franchise waiting for the future. It's moving like a franchise staring straight at a championship window. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it, because the pressure is on and the Niners are right in the middle of the storm. Let's start with Max Iheanacher, because that name might reveal way more about the 49ers mindset than people realize. On paper, it makes a ton of sense. We're talking about an Arizona State right tackle with rare size, length, movement skills, and the kind of footwork you just don't see every day. In pass protection, the tools are there. In space, he can move. And when his punch lands right, you can see the ceiling of a high-level NFL tackle. That part is real. The physical talent is absolutely there. But here's where the conversation gets interesting. Iheanacher is also a project. He still needs work with hand placement, base, anchoring against power, and the finer details of the position. So if the Niners spend a premium pick on him, they're not taking a player who's guaranteed to help them right away in year one. They'd be betting on tomorrow. And that is exactly where this thing gets spicy. Because sure, there's a very tempting argument here. Let the kid sit behind Trent Williams for a year or two and develop into the next freak tackle for this franchise. That's long-term vision. That's protecting the future. That's the smart franchise play. But here's the question the faithful has to ask. Is this team in a moment to think about the future, or is it supposed to crush the present? San Francisco does not look like a rebuilding team. Not even close. If anything, this entire offseason has been screaming urgency. It's screaming contender. It's screaming a franchise that understands the window with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and the rest of this core cannot be treated like some experiment. So if you spend pick 27 on a player who might not give you much right away, then you are knowingly leaving immediate value on the table. And for a team under championship pressure, that matters a lot. So here's my read. Iheanacher is a good name, a real talent, a guy who could absolutely become a high-level starter. But if the 49ers go in that direction, they're sending a mixed message. They'd be saying they want to win now while using a premium resource on a plan for later. And real contenders have to line up their words with their urgency. Tell me straight up in the comments, would you use that pick on Trent Williams' future replacement? Or would you demand immediate impact in the title race? Now here comes the part that really gets the blood pumping. Myles Garrett. And let's be clear from the jump. What's factual is this. The Browns reworked his contract. That happened. Everything after that is interpretation, speculation, and reading between the lines. But some rumors show up, make a little noise, and disappear. This one? This one sets off contender alarms all over the league. Because when a player like Myles Garrett becomes even a little more reachable, the entire conversation changes. We are not talking about just another good pass rusher. We are talking about a game wrecker, a nightmare, a one-man storm system who changes protection schemes, wrecks quarterbacks' timing, and forces offenses to play scared. A player like that does not belong in the "let's monitor the situation" category. A player like that forces serious franchises to pick up the phone. And this is where the 49ers come in. If San Francisco is truly serious about attacking the 2026 season with Super Bowl ambition, this is exactly the kind of move that separates a contender from a favorite. Just imagine that defensive front with Myles Garrett joining forces with Nick Bosa, with Michael Williams no longer having to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, and Osa Odigizua giving the interior more bite. That's not just a good defensive line. That's the kind of front that can choke the life out of a playoff game in January. Of course there's a price. A massive one. Nobody's pretending otherwise. There's no guarantee Cleveland wants to trade him. No guarantee Garrett would want San Francisco. All of that has to be said. But you know what also has to be said? A team with an open championship window cannot sit there playing it safe while a rival in the NFC jumps in and makes a move like that. The worst-case scenario is not paying a steep price. The worst-case scenario is watching the Rams, Seahawks, or Eagles land that caliber of player while you sit on your hands. That's the mentality I want from the Niners. Calculated aggression. If the structure of the deal lets you stay strong for the future without completely gutting yourself, then I'm saying it loud. Get in the fight. Because Myles Garrett is not a luxury item. In a title chase, he is a ceiling raiser of the highest order. So now I want to hear from the faithful. If it were up to you, should San Francisco go all in on that possibility, or protect the draft picks and play it safer? Drop it in the comments because this debate says everything about how big the Niners are really willing to dream. Now, in the middle of all the loud, flashy storylines, there's one piece of news a lot of people might shrug off and say, "That's nothing." And I think that's exactly the trap. Brian Robinson Jr. leaving for the Falcons may not sound like an earthquake across the NFL, but for a team living under championship pressure, poorly managed details turn into major problems later. And the 49ers know that better than anybody. Robinson was not a star. He didn't light up the stat sheet, but he gave the Niners something contenders absolutely need: reliability. He helped preserve Christian McCaffrey, handled his role when called on, and gave stability to a backfield that, amazingly, basically survived the regular season with just him and McCaffrey carrying the load. That alone says a lot. On a roster that battled injuries all over the place, the running back room was one of the few spots that stayed steady. Losing a dependable piece after that is not insignificant. Right now, behind McCaffrey, you're looking at Jordan James, Isaac Guerendo, and Patrick Taylor Jr. There's youth there, there's juice, there's upside. But is there security? That's a different question. And contenders do not survive on upside alone. Contenders need a real plan B. They need somebody who can step in without the whole structure wobbling. They need a player the coaching staff trusts when the schedule gets brutal, when the starter needs a breather, and when January football starts demanding depth. That's why bringing in a veteran makes so much sense. And the name that's been brought up, Austin Ekeler, fits that logic. The facts are simple. He's coming off a torn Achilles, so nobody should act like he's some plug-and-play answer. He would be a bet, a test drive, a shot to see if there's still gas left in the tank of a player who has been incredibly dangerous, both as a runner and as a receiver. But in Kyle Shanahan's system, that kind of versatility always gets attention. My read is simple. San Francisco cannot romanticize depth. They cannot assume perfect health is going to bless them again. If this team wants to hold contender status all season long, it has to protect McCaffrey from being overworked too early and too often. And that means finding a reliable backup, whether it's Ekeler or another veteran. Because sometimes a championship doesn't slip away in a giant headline. Sometimes it slips away when a roster gets tired, thin, or predictable at exactly the wrong moment. So let me ask you this. Would you go get a veteran for this backfield, or would you trust the current group behind McCaffrey? And all of that brings us to the biggest question in this entire video. Are the 49ers really back in the contender tier? For me, on paper, the answer is charging hard toward yes. And it's not because of one move, it's because of the full picture. San Francisco attacked this offseason with more precision than a lot of people expected, filling needs without panicking, and maybe more importantly, not looking like a franchise caught between two eras. The biggest name obviously is Mike Evans. And how could it not be? If he's healthy, the Niners just added a proven weapon, a physical presence, a battle-tested playmaker with real star power. That changes the tone of the offense. It gives the passing game a different shape. Pair Evans with Ricky Pearsall and Christian Kirk, and suddenly the receiver room has variety, fit, and serious potential inside Kyle Shanahan's system. Is it automatically better than the peak version from 2023? No, and we don't need to lie to defend this team. But it can absolutely be functional, dangerous, and more than enough to put this offense back in business if the health holds up. On the defensive side, the read is serious too. Dre Greenlaw is back, and that alone brings back identity, intensity, and communication. The team added corner depth with Nate Hobbs, brought in Vidarian Lowe for a useful role up front, and traded for Osa Odigizua to give the interior more muscle and punch. This is not a perfect roster. The run defense still has to prove itself. The secondary still has to show more. Greenlaw still has to prove he can get back to that high level. All of that is fair. But here's what gets lost sometimes. In today's NFL, building a roster that is elite, deep, and explosive at every single level is almost impossible. So the real question is not whether the Niners are perfect. The real question is whether they have enough to enter the season as one of the true powers in the NFC. And honestly, I don't see many teams above them. The Rams deserve respect. The Eagles are still dangerous. But San Francisco, with this volume of upgrades and this core still alive and kicking, absolutely belongs in that conversation. The biggest message from this offseason so far is this. The 49ers did not act like a franchise that accepted decline. They acted like a team that still feels the pull of opportunity. A team that knows the window is not closed. And for the faithful, that changes everything. So tell me this. After free agency, Do you already put San Francisco in the top tier of the NFC? Or do you still think one more major punch is needed to lock that in? At the end of the day, this is the read on the Niners right now. This is not a team built to wait. This is a team built to answer pressure. They might gamble on raw talent in the draft. They might monitor the chaos around Myles Garrett. They absolutely need to manage the backfield depth better. And they've already sent a loud message that they are thinking big again this offseason. The window is open, the expectations are heavy, and now the talk has to turn into results. Santa Clara is moving like a contender, and real contenders know 2026 cannot be just another promise. Now I want to hear from the faithful. Does this roster already look like a Super Bowl team to you? Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your take in the comments because the faithful never leaves.